What's happening now is not working. And these guys, and Donald Trump has gone out there and he outworked Hillary Clinton and he put forward a much better agenda. And America said enough is enough with failed policies. That's what this election was about.
Sean, it's Megan here. Question for you. Just a couple of weeks ago, you were walking into the studio, right as my hour was ending, you were coming in, and it was the night of the Comey announcement, and you were relieved and were feeling like it was a game changer, like it was going to restart momentum. Do you feel like that was the moment, that was the tipping point that switched things back after what had been a hideous month for Trump, or was it something else? What was it?
You know, I think it's all the things I just mentioned, Megan, and I remember the night well. I put my hands up in the air and I said, we're back in the game. We're back in the game. But, you know, fundamentally, you know, what drives elections? Peace and prosperity. America's not prosperous. America's not working. Hillary lied about her emails, lied about Benghazi. She's corrupt. She's so dishonest. Look at the exit polls tonight. And at the end of the day, you know, is Donald Trump like every other person? Are we all flawed? Have we all sinned and fallen short? Yeah. And maybe he wasn't spending his entire life running for president, which is why he probably went on the Howard Stern show. If my plan is to run for president, I probably wouldn't go on Howard's show. And with that said, Americans saw through that, and they saw a guy that was really successful and really had a dream that America could be a lot better. Look, we have nearly 50 million Americans in poverty, nearly 50 million Americans on food stamps, 95 million Americans out of the labor force. These are millions of our fellow citizens that are suffering. Things are getting worse. This president's taken on more debt than every other president before him combined. And Americans are looking at their children and grandchildren and say, this is immoral. This has to stop. And that is the reason why I felt confident coming into tonight that he had a very good chance, although a difficult path, as we've been following the news all night. And he was able to pull it off because the American people, deep down inside, they cut through the clutter, they cut through the noise, they cut through all the spin, and they said, we're not on the right path.
Sean,
and that's what drove tonight's election.
Yeah, go ahead, Brett.
Is this a country that has changed its demographics? Is it a country that is now, as you say, ready to kick the table over and say Washington doesn't work? Where do you see this? Where do you see the state of the country right now?
I think the state of the country, state sponsor of terror, that is a failure. And on every objective measure, you know, thank God the American people, this is about one thing. They see that Washington is broken. And by the way, Republicans are just as guilty. Paul Ryan is not going to be the Speaker of the House in January. I was going to save that for my program tomorrow. He's not going to be the Speaker. His state went for Donald Trump tonight. I mean, it's an amazing turn of events because the establishment on both sides, Republican and Democrat, have lost touch with the real lives of real Americans that are really suffering. And Donald Trump has now opened the door and said, we're going to fix it, and we're going to turn that table over. And you know what? I wish him all the best, because it's not going to be easy, because all the same people that opposed him in the lead-up to tonight are going to be opposing him tomorrow.
Sean, have you spoken with him tonight at all?
About 3 times, yes.
What did he say? What's the mood, if whatever you can share?
You know, he's kind of superstitious. Like I've talked to him nights before he'd do debates and said, I don't want to talk about it. You know, so he's kind of been, you know, just holding his breath like the rest of us and waiting and watching. And, you know, I think he's very sober about it. And I think, you know, he's a guy that loves a big challenge. I mean, when you think of, you know, it's not something I do, although I worked in the building industry, hanging wallpaper and painting and framing and laying tile. But if you take a piece of land and you say, all right, I'm going to build 150 stories and go straight up, it's a pretty ambitious project. And I think he views this the same way. That
Do you think even he had an understanding that he might win this thing tonight? I mean, of course, you always hope and you think, but realistically, because some of the messaging we got out of the team, the Trump team early in the evening was like, Well, you know, we wish we had more support, but it didn't seem like even they expected this.
I told him yesterday and I told him tonight, do not believe the exit polls. No matter what happens, don't buy it. And, you know, when the exit polls came in, sure enough, I mean, you guys were both on the call. It didn't sound good for Donald Trump early on. And I just felt that, you know, like what we have seen in Great Britain. Look, I'm going to tell you other issues that are resonating. You know, the fact that our borders are wide open and you have 95 million Americans out of the labor force, and then you have 11 million people that didn't follow the law and the rule of law, competing for jobs and driving down wages. To the average person that's out of work, that's a big deal. You know, to look at ISIS and Al-Qaeda and the threat that they pose to this country, and we see what happened in Chattanooga and Orlando and San Bernardino and what's happening in Europe, the fact that we have open borders seems really dumb to the average person. The idea that Hillary, behind closed doors, according to WikiLeaks, says we can't vet refugees, but she's going to increase the number of refugees by 650%. The average American